verses 21 through 35. And some of you may recognize it. It's a story of the unmerciful servant. And so a little background on this story is Jesus is hanging out with the disciples in a town called Capernaum, which is on the northern side of the Sea of Galilee, which you can visit today, by the way. You can visit the ruins. Very cool place. I got the opportunity to go there 2 Marches ago, and it's just a fascinating place. So he's hanging out with the disciples, and Peter, who is one of my favorite Bible characters, because he's kind of this rough fisherman guy that he's always the first to talk when he's hanging out with Jesus, and oftentimes puts his foot in his mouth. But he's just a real sort of what you see is what you get, genuine type of guy. So that's why I like him. So let's take a look at this story here. Again, Matthew 18:21 through 35. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, "Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother when he sins against me? Up to 7 times?" Jesus answered, "I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times." Or some translations say 70 times 7. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 talents, which is like $1 million, was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. The servant fell on his knees before him. "Be patient with me," he begged, "and I will pay back everything." The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. But when that servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii, which is like a couple bucks. He grabbed him and began to choke him. "Pay back what you owe me," he demanded. His fellow servant fell to his knees and begged him, "Be patient with me, and I will pay you back." But he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. When the other servants saw what had happened, they were greatly distressed and went and told their master everything that had happened. Then the master called the servant in. "You wicked servant," he said, "I canceled all that debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had on you?" In anger, his master turned him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all he owed. This is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother from your heart. So a couple observations here. First off, Peter, as he comes to Jesus, he thinks he's being pretty generous, right? Because the common teaching of the day from the rabbis was that you should forgive 3 times. I don't know where they got 3 times, but that was the expectation. So Peter coming in saying, "Should I give 7 times?" He's thinking, that's pretty good, right? And there's some Bible scholars also who talk about the number of 7 in Scripture being sort of this number of perfection. So maybe there's also this idea of Peter is saying, forgiving perfectly. And so Jesus' response when he says, not just 7 times, Peter, but 70 times 7. So it's like this idea of super abundant forgiveness. So the first guy, he owed millions of dollars, right? And the second guy owed a couple of dollars. But what's interesting to me is that neither of these individuals had the means to pay back the debt, right? The amount of the debt is sort of insignificant. It's just the fact that neither one of these men could repay it. What can you do? If you don't have the resources to pay your debt, you're kind of out of luck, right? So if we look at the stories that I've shared previously, how in the world could a father who sexually abused his daughter ever repay that debt of robbing her of her innocence? He can't, right? What could an instructor who, probably his view on the story is that he was doing his job, and he probably didn't even know that what he did was wrong to the student. So how can he, and once the student's gone and somewhere else in the Air Force, how can he possibly repay them? So this is where we come to the point where I want to talk a little bit about the uniqueness of Christianity and following Christ. Christianity, if you look through like comparative religions of the world or whatever, Christianity you'll find is the only one with the storyline that God cancels the debt, really takes it on himself, and pays it on our behalf in order to restore our relationship with God. Every other religion you look at, or system, doesn't have to be a religion necessarily, it could be a philosophy, says either A, there is no debt, right? So don't worry about it. Or B, it sets up this system of repayment, or you have to do X, Y, and Z, list of 5 things or 10 things or 100 things in order to restore your relationship with God. And so it's about somehow repaying your own debt. So the second scripture we want to look at this morning, and I just love it because I think it summarizes for me the entirety of the gospel message, the whole New Testament in my mind. Maybe it could be summarized in this point. And it's in 2 Corinthians 5:21. And it says, God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God. That all of that sin is placed on God. All of the rape, all of the murder, all of the genocide placed on Jesus on our behalf so that we can be restored to a relationship with him. And so all other debts, really, that we might hold are sort of small in comparison to all the sin of the world, right? But it kind of doesn't matter because in our own resources, maybe we don't have the resources to pay whatever debt. But the neat thing is that this is really the starting point of forgiveness for us, right? As we realize the debt that Christ has forgiven, it's compelling, right? It motivates us to forgive those who have offended us. And I mentioned earlier that this message this morning is not about self-help, but rather it's about God-help. And I truly believe that forgiveness is only possible when we understand the forgiveness that has been given to us. And that is a starting point for being able for us to forgive those who have sinned against us.